Hello. I wanted to create a stream in response to Steve Grumbine. He's the founder of the Real Progressives, somebody who I would certainly count as a Facebook friend. I guess whatever that means, right? Somebody who I find interesting. I think he actively tries to help people. I think that his personality may cause him to come off as a little bit more abrasive than he wishes, and part of that I see, or rather I've seen in my own life. Right when Donald Trump first got put into office, right, I saw that there was only one way to move forward, and certainly that was some level of opposition to the bad orange man. So I'd show up to a lot of rallies and protests, and I would make sure that I would get my point across. Usually, it was through some sort of compulsion. I would try to compel people. Don't you know how much better my ideas are? Don't you know that you're fighting against your own best interests? Don't you know how much research I've done into this? Don't you know? Don't you know? Don't you know? Um, and if I'm doing that, where is there room for? Hey, tell me about your life. I mean, I certainly don't know everything about you. I certainly don't know what drives your political calculus. I certainly don't know exactly how easy or not it is for you to put food on the table for you and your family. I don't know what sort of opportunities you've had. I suspect anyone who says that you're privileged, regardless of what color you are, is probably full of it. And chances are you probably have a pretty tough life if you are an average working class person. And so, like, no matter how, no matter where your heart is, no matter how much you want to help, I mean, if I perceive that you're a dick, I don't care. I'm just not going to listen to you. And I think therein lies the problem. And I saw this in my own life. I was by people that are like, hey, if you um, use your privilege to fight, right? White male privilege. Okay, well, what if I do that? And so part of that was even with the Salt Lake County district attorney. Sim Gill. Seems like pretty much everyone hates Sim Gill. Well, anyway, I found a place where I embarrassed the hell out of Sim Gill. I yelled in his face for about 10 minutes. And because, here I am making sure that he knows, right? Don't you know how much better I am, morally? And maybe that's true when it comes to Sim Gill, my God. But um, that didn't that didn't do anything but piss him off and embarrass the hell out of him, or because it was also at a place where he was around a bunch of other candidates. This was back in 2018. So I yelled in his face about Patrick Harmon. Well, anyway, the first chance he got, right when I started having a, a problem where my world was collapsing. Pandemic. My ex-wife and I, we were splitting, still trying to figure out a way to, raise our child to the best of our abilities, make sure that he knows that we both love him, make sure that both his mom and I are on good terms, because like, what good is that if we hate each other? And so I moved out. I decided I was going to save myself. First day of moving out, I apparently moved above a maniac who assaulted me very first time I ever met him, and then he pulled a gun on me about 20 days later. Sim Gill dropped charges on him as I literally had to defend my life with my 8-year-old son about 30 feet away. So Sim Gill drops charges on this guy who's got a mile-long criminal record. His name's Craig Pearson. Actually owns the property, refuses to do anything. Colette Pearson, who's a real estate agent here in Utah, and when the cops reached out to her, she said, "Not my problem." And so here I am in a place where I'm a combat veteran. My floor is shaking at like 80 decibels. No joke. Literally caught it on my decibel meter. And then the cops refused to do anything, just made it worse. Sim Gill probably saw my name and said, "Oh boy, let's go cornhole us a drunk." And then came after me. And so my world was falling apart. But don't you know that, inside my heart, I push for good things. I try to help people. Well, that doesn't matter, man. That's not the way the world works. And so I found myself in a place where, like Abraham and Isaac, I realized that I had to sacrifice, or at least be willing to sacrifice, that which I loved the most. Once that happened, I literally transformed my life. Yeah, I still have to go through court. I have court in March, actually, which is ridiculous. Like the guy, like Craig Pearson, literally admitted on camera in front of the judge, in front of the DA, that he assaulted me before he even met me, or rather, the first time he even met me. Um, and then when he pulled a gun on me, he didn't even say anything. He just punched me in the face. And then I had to fight for my life. And he literally admitted that. Literally admitted that in front. And then they're still going to go through this because it's a joke, man. But I still have to pay for $6,000 in legal fines, which was going to bankrupt me. I was in a place where I was going to file, or rather, I did create a GoFundMe. People helped, and but it was only a fraction of what the cost was. But once I was willing to sacrifice that which I loved the most, right? No longer am I trying to compel people. I'm actually trying to inspire people. And I realized that if you're going to be in politics and you aren't community building, you're full of shit. And if you say, "Well, look at me, I actually wanna help communities," while you're condescending people, while you're saying, "Well, look at these libertarian idiots." Well, come on, man. You're not a serious person. If you have to say, "Well, I I wanna represent the entire working class, but these libertarians are a bunch of jokers and fraudsters," and it's like, "Well, come on, man." Like, so if you were in a place where you were supposed to represent them, so what, you would just say, "Well, you're a libertarian, I don't have to listen to you?" Like, how does that even make sense, man? And so many leftists just surround themselves with people like, "Don't you know how good our heart is? You know, they help the entire working class except for you because you said many words, except for you because you support, bad man, except for you because you pollute a little bit too much, except for you, because of whatever. And so the 15 of us left, let's go organize." And I hate to sound so rude because Steve busts his butt, man. Steve does a lot of good work. But if your messaging is terrible, how's anyone going to know that you do good work? And maybe therein lies where you should do a little bit of soul searching, in my opinion. Right? I don't think Steve is wrong. I think Steve's got some great ideas. I just don't think his messaging is very effective. And I think that ultimately is making him a little bitter. And I see that come off on his Facebook posts. And I want to see him succeed, dude. I don't care what political orientation you have. I don't care what sort of job you do. If you want to help more people than you hurt, especially a bunch of poor people with no money and no power, man, you got my vote, right? Absolutely. Well, let's figure out a way to actually, right, execute that in a meaningful way. I'm sure there's been plenty of small businesses that had a wonderful product or service, but sucked in their business model, so they went under. Does that mean that they were amoral? No. Maybe their messaging sucked, right? And so herein lies the problem that a lot of us have, is that we feel that just because we're passionate about something, somehow that means we're right, or we're truthful, or only we have the facts. So I think there's real meaningful overlaps. In fact, I mean, I'm a registered Republican in Utah, right? I attend LDS church. I go out of my, even as a secularist, right? I'm very free about the fact that I'm a secularist, but I play with ideas of God, right, in my own way. And I realized again, if you aren't community building, man, you're full of it. And so I go to the LDS church in order to community build. Right? I likely think much differently than them, but that doesn't matter. Celebrating with people, and so I'm trying to inspire them to see what I have to say, and that they feel safe. Well, then they can give me feedback in order for me to see, hey, can I align my views with their feedback in order to be more effective? I mean, isn't that what life's all about? Is you take feedback? If you only insulate yourself from people who just agree with you, well, then that's going to ruin your mind, man. That is going to wreck your mind, because then you're going to be, well, what's the problem here? What's going on? If you say, well, hey, what's wrong with me? And people immediately turn around, well, there's nothing wrong with you. Well, maybe there is, right? Maybe it's just your messaging, right? Maybe your heart's in the right place, but life doesn't matter, right? I'm sure a deer's heart was in the right place, and then it got killed by a wolf, right? I mean, so like life is pretty brutal, and life often is a tragedy that has quite a bit of malevolence wrapped up in it. And just because our heart's in the right place doesn't mean anything. Like, we can't be so Pollyanna about it. We've got to understand that our messaging, arguably, is far more important. I'm sure that a lot of people don't even know what the hell Donald Trump was standing for, but plenty of people, right, felt that he was going to represent them because of his messaging. Um, and so, regardless of what you fight for, maybe look back and see if your messaging could be updated a little bit. I suspect, especially when it comes to Americans, if you work on inspiration versus compulsion, you'll find that you'll probably be much more effective. Certainly, right? I could be wrong. I don't need to be right. Right. I'm also in a place where I try to take feedback in order to make my calculus better, in order to be more effective. And right. So far, seems I'm getting there. Right. So when I sacrifice that which I love the most, I'm now making 4 times as much money, which actually allows me to hire professional staff and actually run for office in order to help people, right, become more engaged in their community. And I think that's really what it comes down to is that I just want people to be more engaged. I don't want to tell you that I'm right and that you're wrong. I don't want to tell you that there's an existential crisis. I want to inspire you to do better. And through that inspiration, well, then we're going to solve a lot of these existential crises. I think MMT could be used to, help us not just with, maybe semiconductors, but also with mass producing graphene, especially here in Utah, where, we're destined to double our population by 2050, and we're the second driest state in the nation, right? Well, we're going to need some sort of way to desalinate water, and then maybe that can also help terraform, and then we can actually look to future jobs. And instead of trying to like protect somebody who's at, say McDonald's, say, well, they're threatened to automate if we, raise their wages. Okay, well, automate, man. Let's figure out some jobs to put people in that doesn't rob their soul. That, well, we can't treat them like a person. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and replace them with a robot. Well, good, man. Like these are Americans, right? I mean, I spent a year overseas at war in multiple war zones. Not at the same time, of course, as split up. And I was told that the whole point of fighting over there, right, in the Balkans and the Middle East, was to preserve that which was most precious over here. Well, then come to find out that if you can't add like some sort of quarterly profit to some, Fortune 500 company that y- sends all their jobs overseas, it doesn't really do anything here, hides their money is offshore, and then they sacrifice the American people, just throw them on the refuse heap. Okay, well, like maybe I can inspire people to do better and to look and see, hey, what's going on here, as opposed to demanding, don't you know? Don't you know what I know? That just doesn't work, man. Just doesn't work. But yeah, I think Steve does great work. I think that there's real overlap between working class foundations and working together, and conservative, true conservative republicanism, right? Because I mean, what are we trying to conserve? It should be American values, right? And if I scream at you while dismissing, United We Stand because you didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, or if I dismiss you because you said a meanie word, but I'm supposed to like support the whole working class, or at least I tell myself that. I mean, come on, man. We often go out of our way to deceive ourselves, and we purposely don't look where there's something that could undermine our argument because it scares us. Well, I mean, Carl Jung talks about if we want to be the best self, we want to be our best, truest self. Well, we need to start looking where we're most scared. I did that. Found myself where I had to, I was straw manning the religious folk, right? Well, obviously that means if I straw man you, then I probably don't feel like I have the ability to actually engage in a real conversation with you, right? Probably afraid of what you have to say in some way. Otherwise, I'd probably treat you with respect rather than just straw man your ideas. So I started engaging with them. Sure enough, man, my community completely just expanded exponentially. Now I have a lot of people who actually really like me on the ground, which is most likely to make my political run much easier. I try to inspire people, man. I go to their fast and testimonial meetings, first Sunday of every month, and I actually share my thoughts from the deepest parts of my soul. I was invited to go to an emotional resilience class rather than tell them, how I thought and how much, how much more I've engaged in the community. I just shared from what was in my heart, man, and pulled like their deepest emotions out of them. And I connected with them. That's how we do it, man. Community building. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts. Again, think Steve's great. Think he can do good work. I think his messaging could just maybe be altered a little bit. Those are my thoughts. Keep at it, Steve. Work on your messaging, man, and I think you're going to find that God will bless you, sir.